to the beginning of another week. I call this week 8. Early the other week, when we had a break, a week of 2 weeks, happens to be the week 8. But in academics, this is week 8, taking out the break which you had. So for this week 8, we are going to be considering the doctrine of Christ, Christology, part 1, talking about the person of Christ, his identity, his natures, and the mystery of incarnation. Those are things we are going to be checking in this class this week. Our learning objective is this: by the end of this week, you should be able to explain why Christology is central to Christian theology. Number 2, you must be able to describe the biblical foundations for the deity and humanity of Christ. Number 3, you must be able to understand the historical developments of Christological doctrine. Number 4, you are expected to be able to articulate the significance of the Hypostatic Union, right? And also recognize major Christological heresies and why the church rejected them. That is, there are a lot of heresies propounded by many people over the years. I'll be talking about why the church rejected them. Now, talking about Christology, why is Christology matters? Why are we talking about it? Why is it important? When it comes to Christology, it sits at the heart of Christian faith. Everything else, atonement, salvation, resurrection, eschatology, depends on who Christ is. Christ is like a nucleus of Christian faith. Every other thing we talk about in Christianity surrounds, Christology, everything about Christ. The question that comes to mind is, who is Jesus? That's the first one. And how can one person be both God and man? And number 3, why does his identity matter for salvation? Those are key questions that comes to mind. Looking at the theological stake, when we talk about things that are at stakes theologically, number 1, if Jesus is not fully God, he cannot save. Number 2, if Jesus is not fully human, he cannot represent humanity. The third part of this text is this: if Jesus is not one person, his work is divided and incoherent. Therefore, Christology is not abstract speculation. It is the foundation of Christian hope. It is not abstract speculation. It is the foundation of Christian hope. Please note this. Another thing we'll be talking about is the foundation, the biblical foundation for Christ's deity. When you look at the New Testament, it presents Jesus as divine in multiple ways. Let's look at those ways. Number 1, divine titles. when you look at the New Testament, we talk about theos in Greek, theos, which is God. And this applied to Christ. When you read John chapter 1, verse 1, John 20, verse 28, Titus 2:13, you see where theos, the word God, applied to Christ. And number two, you see Lord, okay, kurios, being used in the sense of Yahweh, right? When you read Philippians chapter 2, verse 11, this is very obvious. So these titles are used for Jesus in the New Testament. Okay. Number two, another thing we can check is divine attributes. Divine attributes. John chapter 8, verse 58 refer to him as eternal. Matthew 28, verse 18 refers to him as omnipotent. Hebrew 13:8 refer to it as immutable. So these are attributes, we see when it comes to presentation of Jesus as divine. All right? Eternal, omnipotent, immutable. Another aspect is divine works. References were made in the New Testament to Jesus as the creator. Colossians 1:3, Colossians 1:16, John 1:3, Colossians 1:16. Creation, the work of creation. Another one is, sustaining the universe. Hebrew 1:3, sustaining of universe, the divine works. And number three, forgiving of sin. Mark 2, verses 5 to 7. Forgiving of sins. These are divine works that, present Jesus as divine. Another work is divine worship. Being worshipped by angels and humans. Hebrew 1:6 mentioned this, and Matthew 14:33. Okay, worshipped by angels and humans. That shows divine attribute of Jesus. Let me ask you this. Why would monotheistic Jewish worship Jesus unless they believe he shared divine identity? Why would monotheistic, when we're talking about mono, those who believe in one God, monotheistic. Theistic is knowing about God. Mono is one. People who believe in one God. There are Jewish who believe in monotheism, worship Jesus. They still worship Jesus unless they believe he shared the divine identity. How can they? How would they? Okay, these are the things that comes to mind when it comes to the identity of Jesus and the person of Christ. Looking at the biblical foundations of Christ's humanity, the New Testament is equally emphatic about Jesus's full humanity. When you look at the New Testament theology, you see them laying emphasis about Jesus's full humanity. Number one, when you talk about human birth and growth, born of a woman, Galatians 4:4, grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God and with man. Again, Luke 2:52, human birth and growth, showed the full humanity. And another thing is human experiences At a point, he was hungry, he was thirsty, he experienced fatigue, he experienced emotions, he had compassion, sorrow, anger, human experiences, temptation. Hebrews 4:15. He was tempted, yet without sin. So those are human experiences that he went through too. That shows that he came into the world and was fully human when he was here. And the third part is human death. Human death. You see real suffering and real death. And that's why we talk about crucifixion. Crucifixion. Philippians 2:8. He died on the cross. So these are the pictures that shows the full humanity of Christ. Don't forget, the first one is human birth and growth. Number two, human experience. Number three, human death. These pictures showed he was fully human. Christ's humanity is not an appearance. It is essential to his role as the second Adam. If you remember, refer to him as second Adam. Right? Looking at the historical development of Christology, the early church wrestled deeply with the identity of Christ. The major council clarified biblical teaching and rejected distortion. There are a lot of heresies that emerged in the early church. I'm going to give you some of them. One of them is docetism. 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 What is the error of docetism? Docetism is it says Jesus only seemed human, which undermine incarnation and atonement, right? Jesus only seemed human. The second one is Arianism. That says Jesus is a created being. That's what Arianism is saying. This denied deity, all right, and contradicts scriptures. The next one is Apollinarianism. Apollinarianism. Jesus lacked human mind, that Jesus did not have human mind. This undermines the full humanity. Another one is Nestorianism. Nestorianism is, two persons in Christ. It divides Christ's work. Okay, it divides Christ's work. The next one is Eltesianism. Eltesianism, one mixed nature, which destroys the two natures of Jesus as human, as deity. Eutychianism, Eutychianism, one mixture. And there's a council that was held in 451 AD at Chalcedon, the Council of Chalcedon. The Chalcedonian definition remains the gold standard, that Christ is one person in two natures, without confusion, without change, without division, and without separation. This is the doctrine of the Hypostatic Union. Please don't forget the doctrine of Hypostatic Union. Christ is one person but two natures, without confusion, without change, without division, without separation. And when we come to Hypostatic Union, by definition, Christ is fully God, fully human, one person, and two distinct nature. That is the definition of Hypostatic Union. So in exam, when I ask you, explain the Hypostatic Union of Christology, You need to understand what I am saying there, that Christ is fully God, fully human, one person, two distinct nature. And why does this matter? It matters because only God can save, only a human can represent humanity, only a unified person can accomplish a unified work of redemption. Only God can save, only human can represent humanity, and only a unified person can accomplish a unified work of redemption. You know, all analogies that people use, water, ice, steam, body, so and so on, all this analogy fall short and often drift into heresy. So it's better to embrace the mystery than to oversimplify it. Most times, we ministers, whenever we want to convince people about all these things, we use all this kind of example. But let me tell you, those examples fall short and often drift into heresy. Just like you are explaining what is called Trinity. When you are explaining Trinity, you can at times people begin to use different things to explain it. In doing that, you fall into heresy. This is very, very important. That is that about Christology one. Christology as a topic is divided into two. We have Christology two. And when it comes to the Christology two, we're talking about the office of Christ. We are not going to go into that today. I just want to give you an overview of Christology one, which I've just done. The second aspect is the Christology the two, talking about the office of Christ or offices of Christ. And when we talk about, the offices of Christ, what we are simply saying that Christ's identity shapes his work in three offices. The identity of Christ shapes his work into three offices. The first one is Christ as the prophet. Okay, Christ as a prophet. Number two, Christ as the priest. Christ as the priest. And number three is Christ as king. These are the three offices, that the identity of Christ divine. Christ as a prophet, Christ as priest, Christ as king. A prophet, he reveals God. A priest mediates and atones. Atones. And he mediator. And the third one, as king, is rules. He rules and restores. So maybe we'll explore this further later on, but let me just stop there today. I just want to give you the overview of Christology, the first part. That's what this is meant for. Please take time to read our lesson for this week, the textbook assigned chapters to be read. I'm going to post them anytime from now. Please take time to go through them. And why I will also prepare for the ministerial ethics very soon. I'm going to send that to you also. Please start again to read from the beginning and read ahead of class. Don't just wait until when the test comes or exam comes before you begin to read. If you have any question about any of these things we have discussed today, feel free to send me an email or reach out to me on a platform or WhatsApp chat, and I will provide answers to your questions. So until I come your way again, I hope you enjoy this new week. Take care, everyone.